Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. On this day, April 18th, 1967, Barnabas Collins' vampire arrived on Dark Shadows, played by Canadian actor Jonathan Frid. And I wondered what I was going to do today. Not literally today, but a couple days ago, because I knew this day was a coming. And I thought, what better way than to do two characters together than Barnabas and Willie? Barnabas Collins and Willie Loomis. And I think it's important to tell the story of Willie and Barnabas. How did they meet? Well, it's really interesting. You sort of got to get into Willie first, but before you can get into Willie, you got to get into Jason McGuire as well. I think that's some of the most important aspects of Willie Loomis himself. Here's a man who had no intention of coming to Collinsport. Here's a man who was probably never going to come to Collinsport for all intents and purposes until he meets one Jason McGuire and he starts following him around. And Jason McGuire is a con man. Willie is a thief. He's somebody who doesn't want to work anymore in his life. He wants easy money and he'll do anything to get it. So Jason comes to Collinsport. Why does Jason come to Collinsport, and why bring? We know why he brings Willie. He brings Willie because Willie is his sidekick. Willie is somebody who he's training to be his apprentice in every way. But Willie is somebody who's very headstrong and very stubborn. Jason is too, and you sort of find out who's the more of the two and who's the more patient of the two. I'd say Jason's a little more patient than what Willie is because Jason's looking to play this big con game with Liz. And that's what Jason really comes back. I think that's another important fact in the Barnabas storyline. These are two people who aren't looking specifically for Barnabas Collins. It's not like they're looking for his tomb or anything, or they know anything about him. No, not at all. Um, you have Jason McGuire who's coming to Collinsport because he knows Elizabeth Collins Stoddard because he was friends with Elizabeth's husband, Paul Stoddard. Um, and then, Paul Stoddard was a con man too. So Liz has bad taste in men. Liz likes the bad boys, so does Carolyn. um, so Jason and Willie are there, and at first, Jason moves into the great house because he's blackmailing Liz, and Willie moves into the great house too, Collingwood. Now, Jason didn't really want him to move in right away, but once he's there, Jason's like, "Okay, you got to listen to what I'm saying to you. Like, just play it cool," because he doesn't want his plans messed up, really. And he hasn't really fully told Willie how he is able to blackmail Liz. He wants to keep that for himself so Willie doesn't use it. Because really I think it's more of a Liz thing than a Willie thing because if if Jason were to tell Willie the truth and Liz Willie goes to Liz and uses it, I think Liz is then going to realize, okay, I can't trust you to keep it to yourself, so I'm going to end this once and for all. And would have found a way to do it. I think that's something too that doesn't get discussed enough when you look at Jason and Willie. Also, Willie Loomis is initially played by actor James Hall, for a couple episodes. Now, it's James Hall's Willie Loomis that is introduced to the portrait of Barnabas Collins, and I do think that's one of the more important aspects, and a lot of us overlook. James Hall is somebody who lays the groundwork for the character of Willie Loomis. Great job and really fabulous. I love his take on Willie. I don't think John Carlin strays from that take. I think he just adds to it, which is great. If you bring in another actor to play a role, the one thing they should do is add to the character that's already been laid out, and that's exactly what John Carlin's going to do. So the last episode with James Hall is when you finally do get to see in a literal episode the portrait of Barnabas Collins. And it's David Collins who's showing Willie Loomis this portrait. Keep in mind, Willie's getting kicked out the house, essentially. I mean, Carolyn's threatening him with a gun. Carolyn and Victoria, the girls aren't feeling safe there, and they tell us, hey, we just can't do it. Carolyn even leaves the house for a time being. Vicky can't because she works there. um, but she doesn't. She tells Liz, I don't feel safe. She makes it clear. But Liz tells Jason, he either leaves or I call the cops. That's sort of one of the great ultimatums in Dark Shadows history, where this is a moment that's going to ultimately cause Willie's demise. One of the many moments, because now Jason, who didn't want Willie here, has to get him to leave. And if he doesn't leave, the jig is up. Liz will call the cops. And Liz did pick up the telephone. Like, I'll call the cops. I don't give a shit. I'm not going to risk my daughter's life or anyone else's life over some guy you brought into the house who you can't seemingly to control. Even though Jason ensures he can control Willie, we're about to find out how true that really is, too. Now, Willie is told he has to leave Collinwood by Jason. This is done with James Hall. This is the episode also David shows James Hall the portrait. James Hall, Willie Loomis, the portraits. The next episode, John Carlin is introduced as Willie Loomis, and there's a bar fight. Now there's a bar fight between Burke Devlin and Willie Loomis. Now, it's John Carlin's Willie Loomis. Again, I gotta give credit to James Hall. James Hall's Willie Loomis built this moment as much as John Carlin's did. And again, great acting by both men. So in prior episodes, James Hall and Burke Devlin, they sort of didn't. James Hall's Willie Loomis and Burke Devlin did not see eye to eye, and you could tell Burke was wanting to hit him. And he told him next time, it's not going to be so nice. And he warned him. And well, in the Blue Whale, things got ugly. Willie pulls a knife. So again, you might say, well, man, there's no mention of Barnabas here at all. No, the only real mention of Barnabas is David shows Willie the portrait of Barnabas. And again, it's proper story context. It's proper storytelling. You have a character who, again, Willie is not specifically here to look for Barnabas. He's not somebody who's from Collinsport, neither is Jason. I'll be right back, guys. So, Willie knows he has to leave Collinwood, and so does Jason. Jason knows Willie has to leave. Jason buys Willie a very brief amount of time by suggesting that, by saying to Liz that, Willie doesn't have any money, he needs money. And again, Jason's been blackmailing Liz with the dead body in the basement routine. And for those who don't know, it's implied that Paul Stoddard is buried in the basement floor. He's not. But anyway, so Jason is blackmailing Liz. So Liz, okay, I'll give him $500. He's got to go. Like, Liz is literally ready to do anything to get rid of Willie. I mean, it's been proven, and Jason knows, and he's like, damn, like he did. I honestly think sometimes Jason is hoping Liz will just cave. This isn't Liz caving. This is someone I'm just ready to be rid of him. So she gives him the money. She goes, here, count it. And he says, I know it's all there. She goes, I'd like to, because I wouldn't want you to steal it. So there's a conversation prior to the money showing up between Jason and Willie. And This is where Jason really first is accuses of Willie. Hey, you got something going for yourself. What is it? What's going on? Because at first Willie didn't really want to leave the house. Now he's by this episode, by 210, 211, he's ready to leave he's ready to go. Right? And Jason's like, wait, what's going on here? I know you. Like Jason's really good at reading people too. And so Jason, he doesn't really have the time to mess with Lily because he's got his own thing going on. But he's slowly starting to hear strange things too after Willie just leaves. And he's told that Willie left by Victoria Winters. And he goes, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, I saw him carrying his his things." And Jason's like, "Well, wait a minute. You saw him carrying things? Well, I thought it was his things." And Jason's like, "No, it couldn't have been." So Jason's sort of playing detective a bit, like, "Wait a second, what? He couldn't have left. I know his stuff's upstairs." So again, this is Jason who's really suspicious of. Wait, what's going on with my friend here? He's just like all of a sudden he's quiet. He's not really saying much to me. He's very distant. And then Jason talks to Mrs. Johnson, which is a very interesting conversation. And this happens after the release of Barnabas Collins, by the way. So I'll get back to Jason here in a minute. So Willie Loomis had what Jason's going to learn is Willie Loomis has been looking into the Collins family history. And the one thing he specifically looks at is the legend of Naomi Collins, which the legend is she was given jewels by a pirate. You guys know my theory about this, um, so I won't repeat it. But that a lot of the Collins family members were buried with their jewels. So Willie gets the bright idea that he's going to open Naomi's coffin and get some jewels and be rich. Um, so Willie gets a pulley system, a crowbar, and he attaches this hook to the ring on the lion's mouth and to the coffin. He's trying to pull the coffin lid off of Naomi's coffin. It doesn't work. And slowly the ring starts to move and a secret door opens up, and Willie has just found a secret door to the mausoleum. The one thing Willie's been hearing is this weird heartbeat sound that has sort of been creeping him out a bit. But once it stops, he's like, okay, okay, I'm just hearing things. Maybe it's. I'd like to think Willie thinks this is his conscience reaching out to him, but it isn't. Um, so there's some chains on the coffin. Willie takes the hammer and chisel, and he takes the chains off, which is gonna be the biggest mistake of his life, um, and the greatest moment of ours. um, he opens the coffin and he sees these jewels. Then he sees eyes open up, and then a hand comes around his throat. And then we hear a knock on the door at Collinwood. Well, sorry, I jumped. Before we hear a knock on the door, Jason McGuire and Mrs. Johnson are talking. And Mrs. Johnson says how she enjoyed talking to Willie. And he goes, "Well, what would you talk about?" He goes, "Family." And Jason finds that odd. And Jason's like, "Your family." Willie would talk about your family. "Oh, no, I wouldn't. You wouldn't get two words out of me about mine, about this family, the Collins family." And Jason's like, "Well, what about him?" About a lot, how they had a lot of history. He wanted to know all about them, and especially that man in the portrait there, Barnabas Collins, that he died in England. So Jason finds this very strange. Willie asking about the dead people. So this is really odd. And Jason just goes. He goes upstairs. He's like, I'm beat. He's been looking for Willie, who he can't find. Um, and you know, so we have a knock at the door, And Mrs. Johnson cuts a promo about no one hands a thin up around here after prior to that. And then after Mrs. Johnson hangs up the coat, she opens the door after hearing the knock, and a young man appears before her, claiming to be a cousin from England. And that man would be Barnabas Collins, played by Canadian actor Jonathan Frid. You know, the introduction of Barnabas, again, it's very interesting. It's a great episode. I'll leave a link in the description box for you guys to go watch that. Also, with Willie and Barnabas's relationship is something I wanted to get into with this video. Let's see about time, yes. Um, their relationship would be one of at first challenge because again, with Willie, there's Jason who's constantly asking questions about Willie, even when Willie's around him now. When Willie reappears, he's very beaten, he's very worn down. He's not the man he once was, and he's very scared. And even when Burke Devlin gets an apology from Willie, he's like, "Whoa, was not expecting that. What is this? What's come over you?" And this is where Burke Devlin tells Jason Ware, "Hey, I think something's wrong with your friend there. Go see for yourself if you don't want me." And Jason goes, "Okay, I will." And Jason's talking to Willie, and he sees a cut on his arm. He sees blood. He goes, "Where'd you get that? Like, what's this?" And it's nothing. I'm gonna get you to a doctor. And even Jason's sort of concerned, and then Willie passes out. And it's very strange for Jason to see this side of Willie he's never seen before. Here's a man who seems scared and yet terrified, but not of him. And really, too, prior to Willie disappearing, Willie's clothes disappear, and by this I mean there's an episode following Barnabas's release where Jason McGuire comes down the steps and he goes, "Has Willie been in here? Has anyone seen him?" And Liz goes, "No." He goes, "Well, somebody was here. Somebody broke into this house last night and stole Willie's clothes." And she's like, "What? Aren't you sure it's Willie?" And Jason says that whoever it was, because Jason was in the room when the clothes were gone, after the clothes went missing, and he's he says that the person took great pains to hide from him, and he couldn't understand why, if it were Willie, why would Willie want to hide from him? Again, this is very, very good setting up by the writers and the actors. I mean, Dennis Patrick did a good job. I know he's playing the heel, but he did a really good job here. Great job. So, what is Willie and Barnabas's relationship to sort of get into this? And, well, how they meet, again, I've talked about that, but it starts off as very much servant and master. Do what I tell you, and you do what I say. And Willie does it. But then Willie starts to fight a bit too, where he's making phone calls to Maggie Evans, his father, of where Maggie is, and then Willie receives a beating by a cane from Barnabas. Um, One of the best moments early on that you can look, there's a moment when Barnabas gets out of this coffin. I've talked about when he talks to Josette's portrait before, and I don't want to talk about that too much, as I know I've talked about that a lot. But there's another moment too when Barnabas has kidnapped Maggie and Maggie's down in the basement. Barnab- Barnabas could easily just go down and kill Maggie, right? Willie's talking to Barnabas, and it's almost like Barnabas is just standing there listening to Willie talk to him. Like he's almost like it's like he's asking somebody to talk him out of this. And it's really weird. And it's like, wait, here's the guy you beat the crap out of. Why are you listening to him? And then you're realizing, oh, Barnabas has a conscience. And this isn't your first hint of it, but it's one of many hints. Again, I'd say your first hint is him talking to Josette's portrait, that he has a conscience, in my opinion. And So Willie being able to say things to Barnabas about, hey, you shouldn't go down there and hurt her or kill her, and he's listening to him, is really interesting, and it's great work by Jonathan and John Carlin, Jonathan Fred and John Carlin. Here's Jonathan Fred. He's choosing to stand there and listen to Willie as Barnabas, and I think that's one of the most key moments of Barnabas prior to the babyface turn that we're gonna see. I mean, it's a lot of hint that they could turn in babyface. Really, if you're looking for hints of Barnabas becoming babyface, they're in the episodes. Again, I've talked about the portrait, and if that's not enough for you, the episode where after he kidnaps Maggie and John's talking to him about not killing her. Well, then there's the post of this where Maggie dies. Now, Barnabas doesn't specifically kill her, he doesn't choke her or hurt her, but she dies. She just dies. And Barnabas is like sort of blaming himself, like, oh my God, what did I do? Moment. Now people are going to get on me for Dave Water. I'll get into that. Um, and there's another interesting moment post Maggie's death. Maggie's not really dead. They fake her death to sort of throw the person who kidnapped her off. And it's Barnabas who's told that it's Barnabas Collins is the first person outside of Joe and Sam that Dr. Woodard tells tells that, hey, Mag, yeah, she's dead. And this is sort of the oh my God you see in Fred's face. And then there's a moment too in the old house where Willie and Barnabas are talking. And Willie is all but on Barnabas's shoulder. Basically, he's like a Geppetto, or he's like a Jiminy Cricket. We killed that girl, Barnabas. We killed her. And it's like, like, you got to understand when this happens, I'm expecting the cane to go across Willie's face here, and it doesn't. And it's like, holy shit. It's great acting. Willie's sort of somewhat reaching in many ways. Even though they cast Sarah David as Ben Stokes, I would say Willie Loomis is your catalyst for your Ben Stokes. He's the reason for your Ben Stokes. He's very much Ben Stokes prior to Ben Stokes. Um, though, you could say, well, they're not really friends. Yeah, but Barnabas listens to Willie at times. It dismisses him too. And he does the same thing to Ben at times, too. So it's just like, what are you doing? Um, Now, not as much, obviously, but you'll see. Um, Again, their relationship starts off very much servant master, and then they start to talk. And one of the better moments, too, is when the ghost of Sarah does show up and she's outside playing. And Willie's like, hey, kid, you got to get off this property. And she goes, but I live here. He's like, where do you live? She goes, right there. And she keeps pointing to the old house. And Willie's like, what? You don't live there. When Willie turns to the old house and turns back to her, she's gone. And he's like, what the heck just happened? And he tells Barnabas, hey, I saw this kid playing outside. And Barnabas cuts him off and goes, I've told you to keep David off the property. And Willie's like, no. This wasn't David. This was a little girl. She's about 9 years old. She looked to be about 9. And Barnabas pauses like, there's no little 9-year-old girl here playing. There hasn't been in a long time. And Barnabas, you sort of get the sense, oh, Barnabas knows a little girl. Obviously, for those who know, but for those who don't, this is Barnabas's sister, Sarah Collins, who's a ghost. Sarah's death is ultra sad in 1795, by the way. Um, you could tell Barnabas loved his sister very much. And so the ghost of Sarah keeps teasing that she's going to have this confrontation with Barnabas, and she does when Barnabas is going to go kill Julia Hoffman. Obviously, I'm not going to get into Barnabas Julie. I'm trying to keep it to Barnabas Willie. Now, what becomes of Willie? Eventually Barnabas just sees Willie as somebody he can get rid of, and in every way he's hoping he can get rid of him. So when this is sort of the ultimate act of defiance by Willie. Willie's been defying Barnabas for some time before Julia ever showed up. But ever since Julia's treatments, Barnabas's powers have sort of been waning a bit, and this has allowed John Carlin's Willie Loomis to sort of have a mind of his own for the first time since Barnabas's release, really. And now he's at least a big mind of his own. He's tried to have moments, but again, he's been getting beat and shoved around. I mean, Willie's like a pinata at times. Um, I'm kidding, but he does hit him. So everyone finds out Maggie's alive. Obviously, Maggie comes back. Um, obviously, Maggie was saved by the ghost of Sarah. By the way, that's how she got out. So I might do this in parts. Actually, this might be a two-parter for me here. Um, I don't have much more time left. I gotta get kids up to the first school. Um, for John Carlin's character, he goes to warn Maggie that Barnabas is going to attack. And basically, I think this is just Barnabas seeing if Willie will betray him. And Willie does, and he goes to Maggie's house. The Collinsport police are there waiting, and their guns are locked, cocked, and ready to shoot somebody. And that somebody just happens to be Willie Loomis. Can I just say the Collinsport Police Department are the finest shots in horror history ever, ever. Uh, they do not miss. Um, that's Willie. But Willie is laying there. He's in the hospital. He's fighting for his life. He's got more holes in him than Swiss. Um, jeez. And Barnabas sends Julia Hoffman to finish him off. He goes, kill him. He betrayed me. He tried to betray me. And you know, Dr. Hoffman goes to pull out the needle, and in comes the sheriff, and she fixes the needle. She said she was fixing it. He goes, "Oh, Doctor Hoffman," and she's like, "Excuse me." And this is where Dr. Woodard explains to Dr. Hoffman. He told the sheriff what was going on with her, that she's at Collingwood trying to figure out, well, who did all this. Um, so So Willie is sent to Wincliffe because Julia confesses that Willie is the one who kidnapped Maggie. That's why it's so shocking. And even Dave was like, okay, I guess I could see that. And the sheriff wants an explanation. Okay, if if it's over, why is she staying on? This is where Dave Woodard actually saved Julia Hoffman before I end this, and then I'm going to get into part two later on. Um, basically, without us hearing it, you get Dr. Dave Woodard telling the sheriff, well, she has feelings for Barnabas. And this is something Dave Woodard picks up on all by himself. He can sort of sense when his friend has feelings for somebody. I mean, they've been friends for a long time. And I think that's a dynamic nobody really talks about. Is a dynamic between Woodard and Hoffman, because here you have a unique situation where they're not just colleagues, they're really good friends. And he even says, he goes, I can see, Julia, you care for him. I told the sheriff why you're really here. She's like, what do you mean? And she thought Dave figured it out, but what Dave sort of did figure out is, she goes, I could tell you have feelings for Barnabas. And Julia sort of blushes like, oh man, isn't that obvious? And so it's a really good situation. It's a really cool situation. Willie is committed to Wincliffe Sanitarium. He does make a recovery, obviously. And when I come back for my second video later, I'll get into the relationship of Barnabas and Willie even further, guys. You guys have a good day.